Welcome back to Westeros.org on YouTube for my look at the very last Game of Thrones episode ever, the Iron Throne. First question on everyone's mind, no doubt, is, how do I feel about the ending overall? Did they stick the landing? Well, let's start by saying that I feel a little bit like Charlton Heston's character at the end of the first Planet of the Apes movie when he comes across the ruins of the Statue of Liberty buried in the sand and realizes that he was back on Earth all the time. And they did it. They finally did it, You fools. Yes, that sort of sums up my feelings about Game of Thrones as a whole. And as for the landing, I feel that it isn't so much that they didn't stick it as it's a little more like the Hindenburg, I think. It didn't really even start to land, it just blew up in the air all of a sudden. Well, you could see the signs early on. I certainly felt that I could when they started changing what seemed like very integral parts of the story to many readers. And once they passed the books that existed, it started really spiraling out of control. It was speeding up. The dialogue became atrocious, and then these last two seasons, the seventh season mostly got a pass from reviewers and viewers at large. This season, well, the grades have plummeted for this particular student, Game of Thrones season 8. There's even a petition with probably well over 1 million signatures now to remake season 8 with competent writers. That is, of course, not going to happen, but it is amusing to see the level of outrage. But let's dig into the nitty-gritty of this episode. Hopefully I've got the stamina to get through it all. We just got back from Spain a few hours ago, managed to snatch a bit of sleep before it was time to watch the episode and get started. And I'm feeling a little more worn down than usual even, but it's all over after this. And I have decided to go all black today and with Targaryen jewelry in honor of the imagery that they were so fond of in this final episode. We start with Tyrion walking through the ruined King's Landing, and at first I thought it was ash falling, but then it turned out that it was snow. And that's when you start thinking of the fact that, that replacement vision that they put in the House of the Undying in season 2, that we're probably going to see something like that. The ruined, snowed over Maegor's Keep and the Iron Throne in the middle of it. And it's fitting that it would be a callback to season 2 and their version of the House of the Undying, because that is where the show started to die for me. Grey Worm is executing prisoners on the orders of the Queen, apparently. Tyrion goes into the Red Keep and finds a golden hand in the rubble, and there's more strong emotional acting from Dinklage again. Dinklage, who's been pretty much phoning it in for much of the final seasons. He obviously had a strong scene with a goodbye with Jaime, and then we see him dig out Jaime and Cersei here, and it comes across very well. Then we see this huge gathering of Dothraki and Unsullied in front of the Red Keep. It does seem like they're pretty fantastic soldiers, because when you send them into battle, they appear to multiply rather than die. How we still have any Dothraki left is, was a mystery last episode, but they're alive and well. Jon is walking through them with Arya watching from the sidelines, and it's all very ominous. And then we have this visually very magnificent shot of Dany coming out on the steps, and the wings of Drogon unfurl behind her, making it look like she's got gigantic dragon wings. She is, a dragon incarnate. Although it made me more think about a vampire, really, and all the black and everything. Obviously, this is supposed to be very, very ominous. And then she, it's nice of her to adopt the dress code of a Dark Lord, so that we know to recognize that. She couldn't have dressed in, white or something. Of course, it is the colors of House Targaryen, but there could have been some red in there too. And she's planning to liberate everyone, apparently, including the Summer Isles, which, I don't think need a lot of liberating, really. But no, now she's back on breaking the wheel. And while I am fully expecting that Daenerys will take a turn for the dark, that she will become very set in her way, that it is, her way or the highway, so to speak, or the dragon fire, and she will stop at nothing. Something will drive her to the point where she will, use fire and blood in situations where perhaps she shouldn't. But that she would then go and have this, Nuremberg-like speech of liberating the whole world, and how everyone will be with them, basically, and everyone will be in this new world order that she plans to enact. I don't see this, partially of course because the whole breaking the wheel is the show's favorite little invention for Daenerys' motivations, and it is not in the books. Tyrion comes up to her and is clearly very unhappy. She tells him that he committed treason, and he answers with, "And you slaughtered a city," and she seems upset, but it is not until he takes off his pin that she, with some clear reluctance, decides to arrest him. So, hello, we're not that far gone, are we? But obviously she will not take anyone who's not with her. And then Arya warns Jon about Dany as well, saying that she knows a killer when she sees one. He's not safe because he's, the heir to the Iron Throne. So Jon goes to see Tyrion in prison, and Tyrion warns him that Dany will keep on liberating, which is what she said, and asks him if he would have burned the city. He's been up on a dragon, and would he have done it? And Jon says he doesn't know, but Tyrion says, no, you wouldn't have done it. You know that, and he asks her to kill Daenerys, basically saying that it's their only chance. We have to stop her. She's, not going to let anyone choose if they want to be part of this new world order. And he reminds him about Arya and Sansa and how they will not accept what Daenerys is planning. And that seems to be what makes, Jon think again. So he goes to see Dany. There's a snowed over Drogon watching the gate into the Maegor's Holdfast, which is indeed very ruined, and Dany comes in to walks up there to the Iron Throne, and Jon comes in a little bit after, and she talks about her past and his past, and how she wants him to be at her side, and how they'll remake the world together. he's trying to object about the prisoners and so on, and then it is when Danny repeats, that, what if the people also think that they're good and right, and have other ideas for the world, and she says they don't get to choose, and he kisses her and stabs her to death. And this probably is that third and final shocking thing that David Benioff and Dan Wise learned from George when they were talking to him about his future plans. The third thing after the burning of Shireen and the death of Hodor. They said it was one thing at the very end, and yes, we are indeed at the very end, pretty much. So I do think this will happen. I do think that this very bittersweet moment will happen. It is beautifully staged here. They go perhaps a little far in how they bring in Drogon to it. We haven't really seen signs of dragons grieving for their riders quite so much, but then again, Daenerys and her dragons obviously had a particular relationship. Not that I know if they're particularly, fond of their own actual mothers. But anyway, he comes in and tries to, nudge her to see if she's still alive, and then he starts rearing up and roaring, and you can see the fire starting in his throat, and he's gonna burn Jon. You think he's going to know. He turns around and melts the Iron Throne. So I guess the answer to who's going to sit on the Iron Throne is what I used to say in the past, which was no one. I don't think it is going to be melted by a grieving Drogon who's saying, I blame this throne for taking my mother away. I'm so upset with it. I don't think that is what's going to happen, but I could see it being destroyed in the fighting. The fact that the thing that was built with dragonfire would end with dragonfire, I could see that sort of cycle happening, but not in this sort of scenario. And then he picks up Daenerys' body and flies away. Then we see another gathering in the dragon pit, and that was a bit cool because I was there yesterday. Well, okay, I was there on Saturday. There was one of the sites that we visited in Spain was actually the Roman city of Italica and its amphitheater. So I walked down that entrance into the amphitheater and got a sense of how it looks without the added CGI bits. And the reason that you have that platform in the middle and everything is that because that's where you have the opening down into the underside of the amphitheater, where they would keep, the wild animals and the gladiators and what have you, before they were brought up to fight in the arena. So that's what we see. Tyrion is being brought in by the Unsullied, I guess, to see what's going on, and it is a gathering of apparently the great lords of Westeros. It's not 9 of them, I think, or maybe it is 9. I didn't actually have a full chance to count, but it doesn't seem to represent. But most of the great houses seem to have found a new representative. So we have Yara there, of course, for the Greyjoys. We have Gendry there for the House Baratheon. They dug up Robin Arryn again, who's grown a bit. And the new Prince of Dorne is there, although he has one line. So, and mostly he sits around looking very bored. No idea who he's supposed to be or anything like that. But yes, he's there at least. And then various other people. And they've also dug up, it seems, an Edmure again. So we have a Tully Lord. Jon, turns out, is also a prisoner, so some time seems to have passed here. And Jon is also a prisoner, and Sansa ends up in an argument with Grey Worm because he wants to kill Jon, and she thinks that would be a bad idea because they've got the Northern Army outside and so on. Yara is also arguing for killing Jon, it seems, and Arya tells her, you know, I'm gonna slit your throat if you talk more about my brother dying. So poor Davos tries to mediate. They had something for him to do at least, and tries to tell the Unsullied to settle in the Reach, where apparently everyone is gone. Okay. It still doesn't go over so well. Grey Worm still thinks that, you know, Jon should be punished, and Tyrion says that, you know, this should be for the king or queen to decide, except of course they don't have one, and then he decides we should choose one. This is where Edmure stands up and thinks that he's an excellent prospect for this. Sansa is not impressed. All the most powerful lords choosing, well, I suppose just the great houses and a few more, but it's sure not a big collection. So then Sam thinks that everyone should choose, which at least gets everyone laughing. Westeros is not that far gone into madness. It's possible, I suppose, if you imagine that a lot more people have died than we think, that this would be what they could muster in terms of great lords. But they'll have to expand it a little bit, I think. They try to see, or somebody, you know, I think it's Edmure actually says, you know, so I guess you want it to Tyrion, and no, Tyrion, I'm a terrible choice. And then he starts going on about what is it that binds us together? Oh, it's stories, and who's got the best story? Bran does. So he proposes Bran, and everyone agrees. Except at the end, well, Sansa objects because first, and then she says, oh, we can't father children. Well, that's fabulous, thinks Tyrion. We should choose our king from now on. But now it should be all the lords and ladies of Westeros. So that'll be an interesting proposal, how we arrange that every few years or whatever it takes when somebody drops off the pin. Going to be very interesting to see how that would work out in the long run. But anyway, everyone there decides to vote yes for Bran. Nobody else who isn't there, you know, they don't get a vote. And then we get to Sansa, and oh, Bran, you will make such a fine king. I love you, my little brother. The North has suffered too much. I can't make them kneel. We're going to stay independent. And this is where, you know, like Yara and the new Prince of Dorne and a few other people should say, okay, so that was an option too. Hang on, I'll take back my vote and go for independence. But only Sansa gets to do that, apparently, because the others already said yes, and she waited for last, so she managed to sort that out. Bran forces Tyrion to be his hand and says, oh, it is a punishment for him. And, oh yes, when Bran agrees, when Tyrion asks him, will you be... Bran says, why do you think I am here? Which means that Bran basically manipulated everything to be where he is and take the throne, I guess. I always knew there was something evil about that boy. Jon has decided that he will go to the Night's Watch because Grey Worm wants his head and Sansa wants him pardoned, so they have to send him off, and Jon's kind of, huh? Is there a Night's Watch? Apparently they'll always need one. I'm not strictly sure why, now that the wildlings supposedly are on, like, you know, their side and there aren't any White Walkers, but apparently they're still gonna send people up north to just sit around there and count the snowflakes falling or something. So after that we get a little montage of, you know, people preparing to leave. There's a couple of Black Brothers apparently who are escorting Jon to the docks, and the Unsullied are sailing for Nath to start their liberating, perhaps, or just because Grey Worm wants to see it, or maybe they're going to protect it, like he said. I'm not sure. Arya is going off west to see what's off the maps. Okay. And Bran repeats or confirms that he planned it all pretty much by, you know, when Jon says that I wish, you know, I'd been there for you, and he says that you were exactly where you were supposed to be. So It's all a conspiracy by Bran. Brienne, it seems, is the new Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and she finishes Jaime's entry. And then we get a final sort of dialogue scene, which is a small council with Sam the Grand Maester, who presents A Song of Ice and Fire, the story of Robert's rebellion, which apparently somehow doesn't, in the wars that follow, doesn't mention Tyrion at all. Okay, it's supposed to be funny, and it doesn't make sense at all unless he made huge omissions. Drogon apparently flew east, and Bran muses that he might be able to find him, but nobody else seems particularly keen on finding the grieving dragon, which makes sense. Pod is also in the Kingsguard, and his job is to wheel around Bran. Okay, it's an important job, I suppose. And from this scene, you'd think that, most of the other lords and important people in the kingdom are dead, given who sits on the council. They, just found the fan favorites and stuck them there. Awesome. And at the council, we get Tyrion repeating, or starting to repeat, that goddamn joke about the honeycomb and the jackass in the brothel. That is the last we hear of Tyrion. Okay. It's also the last line proper of dialogue, and it's not terribly impressive. And then the final montage, which is Jon comes up by the wall where Baron Tormund is still waiting around, and Arya is preparing to travel, and for a bit there it looks like Jon is the Lord Commander again, but then in the very final scene we're going to see him ride out with the wildlings. Oh, and he also finally gets the pet ghost. Yay. So they made up for that at least. And then they're riding off north. I'm not sure if he's in the Night's Watch, or if he's just helping the wildlings find their new home, or what he's doing. But it's fitting enough that it ends on the Stark children, what they are going to do. Except we don't get to see Bran again, which supports my theory of the real ending. I'll get to that in a moment. And we do see Sansa crowning herself Queen in the North, which are the final lines, which funnily enough did not show up in the subtitling transcript. So I wonder what they did with that one. Okay, but fine. And she has an awful lot of people kneeling for people who never wanted to kneel again. And she kind of, I don't know, she still looks a bit dark and ominous to me, and yeah, I'm kind of over Sansa. It's good that the show is over. So, yes, how should it have ended? Well, I'll get to that in a little bit. I'm just going to switch up my things here and wake up my tablet again and see where I got to with my wrap up and eye rolls and all those good things. My eye rolls, well, that visual of Drogon behind Dany, no matter how good looking it is, that is an eye roll. Dany's speech, gonna liberate everybody in the whole world. Those who don't want to be liberated or don't need to be liberated, be damned. The completely empty reach. Sansa and her, no, we're not gonna kneel again, and then with the end and all the kneeling, and that goddamn joke at the very end. Not to mention, just the whole way that they wrap this up deserves one big, gigantic, bloody eye roll. Favorite bits? The fact that it's over, probably. Some of the visuals in this episode, and it's appropriate, as like I said, that it ends with the Starks. Other than that, there's some good acting. I won't deny that, and as I said, some great shots. But I don't know. It just felt like, but it didn't. No, it didn't do it for me. I mean, I didn't expect it to. but it just felt like so much was missing. Speculations. Well, all right. First, I did say that I had an ending that I wish we would have. Well, I wish that when we had the finals of the scene of the small council, that they had left Bran in there while they were talking, and while Tyrion starts with his joke, the camera pans in on Bran, and we see this little glint of icy blue in his eyes. He is in fact now the Night King, like people had speculated all along, and he manipulated things so that he would be on the throne. Maybe they could have shown that in the Stark montage just after Jon rides out north. No, of course that that wasn't going to happen, but it would have been better than what we got. Some sort of hint that there was more to the world. I don't know. It felt so small at the end, I think. That's it. It really felt small. And it felt like the kingdom was empty of people, and we just got to see what the Stark kids were doing, and that was it. Speculations, before I look at a few of the comments. Well, is Bran going to be the one on... Well, okay, not on the Iron Throne, because maybe there won't be an Iron Throne. I can buy that. I've been on to that idea before. But is he going to be the person who's ruling the Seven Kingdoms? I'm really dubious, partly because I am attached to the idea of him being stuck there beneath the weirwood. But George does things that surprise. It's just that Bran is going to be very young still in the books. A young crippled boy who in the right mind is going to elect him, because that whole thing, he's our memory and he's has all our stories. That's not there in the books. That's like breaking the wheel. It's one of those elements that they've worked in. So what would be the justification? I mean, maybe it's Bran controlling somebody else's body because that needs to be done, but I find it very hard to see. And the voting as they present it, I also find very hard to see. Just that, it's going to be the few great houses, or everyone who can manage to fit into the dragon pit, and doing that every time a new king or queen is needed. I mean, you've had those sort of systems, but I don't know. Is it a little too... we're going to have a sort of democracy, even if, yes, they do have people laughing at the idea of an actual democracy. It's a tough one. The problem is that I can't really see who else either, because I do think that Jon's destiny lies in the north ultimately, but probably beyond. I mean, we do see him going beyond the wall, and I think that maybe he will still have a job to do out there, or maybe he just feels that after killing Dany, that's that's where he will go to live out his life. Sansa. Sansa's queen in the north, not impossible. I'm not quite sure how they'll sell the independent north, if it's going to be in the same way, or sorry, how George would sell it. I find that it is not well presented as it is on the show. It just sounds whiny from Sansa, is really... Arya's ending feels much too easy. Or at least it feels like something is missing from her story. I don't think she'll go back to a normal life, but I think something more needs to happen for her to do something like that, just going away. Perhaps the thing that will, in the end, sways her from her path of vengeance is seeing what it has done to her mother if she encounters Lady Stoneheart, rather than, you know, a couple of lines from the Hound after, you know, weeks together. Brienne as the unlikely Lord Commander, mirroring Dunk, so maybe that. So I think we're seeing endings that do have a lot in common with what we will see in the books, but there's just so much missing from the foundations, missing from the world around the characters. Everything just shrunk, and there was in the end very little left. And it's very sad that it comes to that point. And you know, we're probably going to be back with some more videos once we've recovered. We are going to need a bit of a rest, speculating on what this means for the future of the novels, in terms of which characters are at the end stages that George has in mind for them, and how different will their paths to get there be. More than ever now that I'm waiting for the final books, I had to cleanse my palate from this and forget about what happened with the adaptation. There's, you know, they've done some great things. It's brought many readers to the books, but ultimately it was a very rushed end by two executive producers whose minds, it appears, were already on their next project, Star Wars, and who didn't stick around enough to at least, even if they had very different visions than for the show than they should have had, they should have at least have made the effort to give it the time that it needed to be finished appropriately. As it is, the last season will not have gone down very well with audiences or critics, and that is entirely on their head. So let's see what we have in the way of comments for this final time. Of course, we might always be back with other kinds of videos, and eventually, maybe, there'll be a spin-off, and we'll be here for that. But Game of Thrones itself is over. God help us Star Wars fans. Well, I think you've suffered a bit lately as it is. So I think you've started getting used to disappointment. Falcon 2908. Why is Yara laughing at the idea of a king elected by the people? That's what the Ironborn did in season 6 of the Kingsmoot. Well, the idea, of course, with Ironborn is that it is every captain who's allowed to vote. So it's not everyone. But yes, she's the one who should be most familiar with the idea, actually. She probably should have offered some input on how to do it properly. Do I think that Jon stabbing Dany in the books is going to be related to the Azor Ahai prophecy? I think it is possible, because I think that the end game will play out differently, in that I don't think they will finish off the threat from the others first and then go and deal with... Well, it's not going to be Cersei. I think it's going to... Obviously, Cersei took over a lot of the role of fake Aegon. Euron is going to be his own independent force of dark magic. So the balance is going to be different, and I don't think that Jon is going to stab Dany to fulfill a prophecy, but maybe if he's doing it because she's gotten out of hand, maybe it'll mean something for Jon's final role if, there's still something of a threat to deal with up north, for example. why the wildlings are going back north. Well, obviously the Beyond the Wall is now safer than it was. It's still a pretty darn harsh life, especially as it seems winter is coming again. That dream of spring seems to have been misplaced somewhere. And if it's snowing down in King's Landing, it should be particularly cold and unpleasant up north. So why they are going off again? Because they like that visual. Because Jon is supposed to end Beyond the Wall, and they decided, well, let's put all the wildlings back there as well. But yes, I mean, they ditched everything with prophecies and what have you, really, because, you know, that tells people what's going to happen, and that's not cool. We like to surprise people, and because we have a hard-on for Arya, I'd like to use her as much as possible. For a while there, I thought they were going to end on an image of Arya, and I was like, yeah. Did the Dothraki settle in King's Landing? Good point. I don't know what happened to the Dothraki. Maybe they took over the empty reach instead, since the Unsullied decided to go sailing off to protect the peaceful people of North. It is rather bizarre that you would work so hard for 9 years and then rush to finish like this. I would have thought they had some pride in their own work, but apparently not. Let me see what else we have. Roll up a little bit. Sorry about the silence. I'm just looking over comments and seeing if there's anything more I should respond to immediately. I'll try and... Obviously, generally we don't respond to the chat comments after, but this time I'll try and get some responses to comments on the video at least. So... Well, yeah, Sansa will probably find somebody to marry, I suppose. So that's, you know, she can at least have kids. So I guess they will have some sort of line of Starks still. Bran, of course, you know, they'll have to elect someone to follow, and that should be very interesting to see how they sort out the logistics of that. Yeah, Sam's, you know, managing to fix that Maester's gene and everything, and be the Grand Maester. It's pretty awesome. I guess the Citadel collapsed or something as well during all the, you know, troubles in the rest of the realm that we didn't see. Maybe when the White Walkers overran parts of Westeros before they got destroyed at Winterfell. Oh wait, they didn't even... yeah. So, yeah, the kingdom is a lot emptier than it ought to be, but it's convenient for them. Dany does seem to be a lot easier to kill with one stab than Euron, you know, stabbing Jaime twice, and he was fine for a good while after, but, you know, that's how it's supposed to be, according to them. And, you know, Euron was a joke, so maybe he had those sort of, you know, retractable knives, prop knives that didn't actually stab Jaime. So I think I will leave it at this. The comments are a little bit muted, actually, even if there's a lot of them, but I can understand that. It does feel a little weird. It does feel a little empty. There's going to be a lot of talk this week, and we'll try and engage with some of it at least. But it is. It didn't really go out with a bang, did it? More like a whimper. The bang was in the last episode, the previous episode, where the Hindenburg exploded, and then this was just people standing on the ground and going, "Oh shit, that didn't go like we had planned. It did it." Well, maybe Drogon isn't the last dragon. I'll say Drogon could be a girl, and then maybe Drogon had some fun with one of his brothers, and then Drogon will lay some eggs somewhere, and then we'll have a bunch of dragons. And it's always nice that he's around. At least I don't know if it's possible. I could see that. I could see one of the dragons surviving and flying off into the sunset, or off to a shy, maybe. Maybe that's how we'll get a glimpse of a shy at the very end of the book through a dragon point of view. Nope, that's probably just me kidding, but I hope we have a dragon around, and even if it is the very last one, it's going to be a very sad, lonely dragon, and I'm going to make myself sad thinking about that. But I'm already pretty sad about this show, so it fits. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. I need to catch a few hours of sleep. My throat is giving out on me after talking for too long again. Thank you all for being with me through these live streams this year, and all of those who've watched our episodes through the years. It's been one hell of a ride. It's a very bumpy ride at times, but there's also been some fun. And it's been an adventure for us. A lot of things have happened to us because of this show, really, and we wouldn't have been visiting fantastic Roman ruins in Spain just 2 days ago if it wasn't for this show. So I suppose I can't say, like I did a few seasons ago, wish it had never happened. Not with complete conviction, like. Maybe it would have been better overall if it hadn't, at least in some ways, but it's also changed a lot of people's lives for good, so I suppose I'll have to give it that. But as an adaptation of A Song of Ice and Fire, well, it deserved it deserved a lot better. But now I'm just going to go back to waiting for the final books, and once those come out, I'm going to enjoy myself greatly reading them. Thank you all.